Hey, what's up guys? Nate here, and welcome to this Sonic Academy tutorial series. This is our beginner's guide to Cubase 13 course. Right, so these are updated versions of the 9.5 Cubase beginners series. If you have done those in the past, chances are there's not going to be a whole lot new here for you, although we do cover quite a few of the new features and plugins in subsequent versions to Cubase. The general content that we're covering here is very much the same as those 9.5 walkthroughs. Now, this is a multi-series course divided into two levels. This series, level 1, we're going to do a crash course on how to use Cubase. Remember, I said this is designed for beginners getting into this DAW for the first time. We're going to take a look at getting your audio setup up and running, customizing certain elements of Cubase. We'll take a guided tour around the user interface. Before starting to work on our first track, we'll look at doing some percussion, importing some synth parts, creating some chords, and some rough arrangement before exporting to audio. We're going to be using 100% stock plugins from Steinberg for this tutorial series, so everybody can follow along if you have a copy of Cubase, or even the demo version of Cubase if you'd like to test it out. And without further ado, let's dive straight into the tutorial series. Let's get into Cubase, check it out, and get things loaded up. I'll catch you in the next video. See you then. Cheers. Hello and welcome guys to this beginners level 1 tutorial series for Cubase 13. Now this is a beginners series obviously, so the aim here is to try and get you up and running as quickly as possible. This is for newcomers to Cubase. We are going to kick things off in this first video with just getting you set up and getting audio in and out of the program. We'll take a look, make sure that your MIDI controller is working, and then also just a few other little areas that you may want to go take a look at as far as customization and setup goes for the first time you're starting up Cubase. Right, so let's get stuck in. The first thing you're going to see when you load up Cubase after installing and registering the software is the Cubase Pro Hub. Anytime that there is no window open in Cubase, this will pop up. You can see you have a menu here. This is the same menu that you have once the project is open later on, which we'll take a look at in just a sec. You've got some news on the left-hand side here, which is pulled from the web. And then we've got our projects. So we have recent projects here. You've also got a number of preset templates that you can work from. I very rarely use any of these. You can create your own templates as well, but today we're just going to be starting with a blank canvas. It's just often what I do as well. So just come back to recent again, yeah. Let's start by creating a new project. I always like to prompt for locations down at the bottom here and make sure that this is checked. You can set a default location for your project as well, in which case you could use this. But just for safety's sake, I prefer to do things this way. And then we can go and create an empty project. So let's just do that, and we'll get a screen asking us to dictate where we want the project to be created. And we're going to use this folder. I've created this Sonic Academy Cubase level 1. We can select the folder. Now we have a new project. Right, so there are a number of different places that we can set things up and customize stuff in Cubase. But obviously the first thing we want to do is we want to get audio in and out of the system. So let's do that first. We're going to come up to the top here in this drop-down menu bar here. Select Studio, and you'll see there's a studio setup at the bottom here. We're going to grab this one, and this window is going to pop up. Now let's take a look at the audio system, the first section of this left-hand pane here. We want to select our sound card from the top here. So whichever sound card you're using, select the appropriate ASIO driver for that sound card. I'm going to be using my Yamaha Steinberg USB ASIO driver for that. There's a number of different things that you can set up here. You could set this to release driver if the application is background. I never really bother with this. These are your current latency setups here. I'll show you where you can actually change this in just a sec. I've got mine set to 64-bit float. This is not an audible difference, but I'd recommend you use the highest precision that you can if you have a fairly modern system that you're working on. I have the Activate Multiprocessing on. So this is just optimized for processors with multiple threads in them. It's pretty much a given these days that your processor is going to have multiple threads, so I would just leave that enabled. You want to keep Activate ASIO Guard on, and this is basically just to do with the automatic plug-in delay compensation and latency. You don't have to worry too much about that. If you are on a laptop, you can use this Activate Steinberg Audio Power Scheme. Obviously, I'm on a desktop here, so I'm just not bothering with that at all. The rest of this we don't have to really worry about. Now we're going to check out my sound card. Just below this audio system here, you'll be able to get into your actual sound card setup as well. And this is where you can enable and disable various outputs and inputs on the physical hardware itself. You can also enable direct monitoring here, which I would do. And the control panel will actually bring up your sound card settings. This is where you can set up the buffer. Now, if you want a lower input latency, meaning the time that you press the key to when the sound is sounded inside of Cubase, if you are playing a VST instrument, if you want that lower, you can use a lower buffer rate here. Just bear in mind that the smaller the buffer size, the more taxing it is on your CPU, so you may start running into stuttering and things. If that is the case, you may want to raise the buffer size up, then you will increase the latency. The latency is going to increase as you use certain plugins that infer latency on the system as well. That's due to the ASIO guard. So yeah, that is there if you need to change that. We can close that down again. So that's it for the audio setup now. The MIDI port setup is pretty much plug and play with Cubase. Any MIDI ports that you have running, any controllers that you have, especially if they are USB controllers, they should show up here automatically. You can just make sure that the relevant controllers are all visible there and that they are all active. Now, Steinberg does have MIDI remotes, and this is a fairly complex scripting language that Steinberg has. If you're looking for custom scripts for your MIDI devices, I would suggest you check out the Steinberg forums. You can download some there and just import them in. These are custom ones that I've built over time, but you can also check in this Add Device panel here. You may find that in my case, the Control S series is actually available as a preset one. So you can see here we've got a number of things that have already been set up for the Control S series, and this is pertaining to the control. This MIDI remote is a little bit different in that you've actually setting up MIDI commands here. This is DAW control, this one here, remote devices. If you do have a device that supports Steinberg, chances are that it will install something here that you can activate and enable for Cubase. Now, the rest of this we're not going to bother with. You don't need to stress about these unless you want to change time formats and so on, but this is totally fine. We can leave all of this. Let's close this down. Now, before we can get audio out, we need to make sure that all the connections are correct. So we're going to come up to the studio and then go to audio connections here, or you can just hit F4 to bring that up. That is the default shortcut key for this. By default, you're going to start on inputs here. I've already set up some stuff here. I want to just show you how to do that. When you click Add Bus, you have a number of options here. I have already set up a stereo input on my in 3 and 4, and I have a microphone connected to my mic, to my input 1. So I could actually add a second mic channel here. We'll add in another one. We'll call this one mic 2, for example. We'll make sure that this is mono, and we can click Add. And now you see it's automatically assigned. My input 2 is on mic 2 now. And then you carry on setting this up as you see fit for your specific sound card hardware that you have. We're going to then move on to outputs. And you'll see that I don't have this one connected at all. And I would suggest you don't connect your outputs here. I would prefer that you go over to the control room here. Now, by default, this will be turned off. You're going to want to enable this. And you'll see you have monitors here now. Now, the benefit of this is that you can actually get the cue signal from, or the preview signal from when you are listening to loops within Media Bay. If you are auditioning stuff that you want to bring into a project, you're not going to hear that if you have just the output set up, because that gets sent to the control room traditionally. It also gives you a number of extra things that you can do, like adding plugins on the control room output as well, like being able to A/B stuff, or add a reference plugin like Metric A/B and reference material between your mix and something else. You can do that on the output as well. Even analyzing software and stuff you can put on those outputs. So I would set up a monitor output here. I have 2 currently set up. You can have, I think, 4, 6 in total or something like that. But you can add in a headphone monitoring output. This is useful if you're trying to set up a booth for a singer. You can do all of that kind of stuff from this control room here. Talkback is available to you here as well. Cue channels as well. So set it up here. Make sure that the speakers that are connected to your sound card are on these outputs here that you have, either monitor 1 or monitor 2, depending on how many speaker setups you have. So mine are connected to mix 1 and 2 currently, and that is all correct there. Right, so let's close this down. Moment of truth. Let's just check that we actually have audio coming in and out. I'm just going to add an instrument, and let's see that we're getting notes and audio coming out of that. Perfect. All working fine. Now I want to just continue to show you around a few other areas with regards to setup. The first one I want to just take a look at is in Studio again. We're going to come down to the VST plugin manager. Now, if you are using VST3, which for the most part you should be because that is the new standard, they will all be in a specified folder on your machine, on Windows and in Mac. But if you do have VST2 plugins, they may be lying around in different folders, especially on a PC. If you need to add additional folders to the plugin scanning, you can do that here by just clicking this little cog down at the bottom. And you can add a path to the plugin scanning. And once that's done, just hit this button here again to rescan all your plugins. Anything that's in the blacklisted or in the block list here, these ones are causing issues. You can see the VST2 ones here are causing problems for me. And you have your effects and instruments here. You can also decide to create customized plugin lists in this window here. See, currently I have this Steinberg only one. This is one that I created to include only Steinberg plugins. You can create a new collection there as well, and maybe add just compressors if you want to, or you can do the same with instruments. In this case, I created one that is just called Sonic Academy. And Sonic Academy contains just kick and Anna 2. And you can also create folders within this. So you could say synth. And you could place Anna 2 inside the synth one. So whenever you're loading up a plugin, you can have this customized plugin list available to you and really kind of whittle your plugins down to something a little bit more manageable with the stuff that you use all the time. Anyways, we won't spend too much more time on that. Let's close this down and we're going to move over to a few other things. There is a project setup, which we should take a look at as well. Project setup is in the project window here. You typically need to set this up once, but you can check this before you start your project. Basically, the thing that you do want to make sure is that your recording formats are correct here. So we are working at 44.1 sample rate and the bit depth of 24-bit currently, and the record file type is a WAV file. You can add in some information here if you want, and that will be attached to the project as well. The rest of it I don't need to worry too much about at all there. Right, so let's take a look at the main Cubase preferences now as well. We'll open the edit page here and come down to preferences. So there is a bunch of stuff that you can customize in here. There's a few that I'm just going to point out to you, which I think are really worthwhile taking a look at. We'll start off in editing. Obviously, everything pertaining to editing audio, chords, control, MIDI, and so on. I want you to just come down to the tools thing here. And this by default will be turned on. Now, when that's turned on, your right click will give you this little tool menu here that you can select tools from. I don't find this very handy. You'll see that I actually have my toolbar up in the top there again as well, and it's duplicated. I would prefer that you guys do preferences and disable this one, because now when you right click, you will get a drop down menu with a ton more functionality. You've got audio mix downs in here, insert silence, split loops, all this kind of stuff, and you still have tools available in this menu here. So make sure that that is unchecked. We'll come back to the preferences again. Now, a lot of this is stuff that you could just change according to your preference, even the opacity of events. Most of this you won't need to worry about. We can come down to general. So here's another one that you want to make sure is on. Autosave should be checked, and you may want to adjust this. I prefer mine to be around 10 or 5 minutes autosave intervals, and maximum backup files. So Cubase will actually not just save one backup, it'll make a number of different backup files and then restart from the beginning again. Media Bay, I prefer to have this scan folders only when Media Bay is open, so it's not constantly scanning in the background the whole time. Typically, when I set Cubase up, I set up Media Bay once, and it should scan everything overnight, and then the next day it's fine. So I prefer not to have that working constantly in the background. We can come down a little bit further. Recording, we don't have to worry about. The user interface, you can change the colors up for Cubase somewhat. Color coding for your track types and so on is in there as well. VST, this you may want to turn on. By default, that I think is off. Suspend VST3 plugin processing when no audio signals are received. This basically just shuts down all your plugins when they aren't doing anything. This would just save a little bit of CPU for you, a little bit of system resources. Just be aware that when they are all processing audio, that they're all going to come back on again. So if you are pushing a project to the limit in a section where not everything is processing, when everything is, it's going to grind to a halt and you're going to get stuttering. The rest of that we're not going to worry about. We can hit apply here. If you want to play around with the presets as well, I suggest that you save them from time to time. You can create a preference preset here and just come back to that anytime you want. For now, we're not going to worry about that, so let's just go OK. And the last thing I want to show you now in the setup is just how to modify and work with key commands, because Cubase, I think it's very handy to get used to your key commands. There's a lot of functionality here that is a lot easier to access when you know what it is directly from your keyboard. So let's go to edit again. We're going to come down and open up key commands here. Now there's a few that I always set up the first time that I install Cubase that I always come and do. Now these are personal preferences, but they work very well for me, and you'll see me using them quite a bit during this tutorial, so I'll run through a few of them. One is my quantize settings. I like to be able to access that directly from my keyboard. You have got an auto quantize, which will follow the zoom level. I'm not always a big fan of that, so we can search for something like quantize here, and you'll see it will filter out all the features that have quantize in it. What I'm looking for in particular is these ones here. Set quantize to 1, and then set quantize to 4, and then 16, and then 32, and 128. So you can see I've set these up to QTERW. For instance, if I wanted to reassign that, you just hit Q, and it'll tell you it is already assigned to quantize, and we can say assign. That's fine. So another way to get around here, if you hit this little keyboard button at the top here, is to just type in any keys, and it'll tell you exactly what is at that thing. So P, for example, set locators to selection range. We can do Z, zoom selected tracks, so on and so on. It's just a really nice way to learn what everything does. The other way that you can set up key commands is if you don't know what a specific command is, for example, and I like to set the tilde key to open up the lower zone for me like this. If you don't know what that is, the actual name for the function, I know that this will do the show hide lower zone here. If you click that once and then come back to key commands, you'll see it's automatically selected that for me, and I can just go in here and assign the key I want for that and say, okay, that's fine. Another one that I like to set up is bounce. Bounce selection is B, which I've set up as well. And that'll just create a new audio file essentially from a selection that you have. And Shift B, I always set to render with current settings, and Control Shift B, render settings. So this is bounce in place when you want to render audio or MIDI down to audio. This is going to be where you do that. And the last thing is macros. You can assign macros here as well to specific keystrokes, which is always really nice. Now macros are collections of functions that you have here. So pretty much anything here can be put sequentially into a macro. Like take this one, for example, this export audio mixdown of whole song. So it will say edit, select all, transport, edit none, file, audio mixdown. So it's doing all 4 of these things in a row, and you can assign a key command to that. I've got this one, for example, which I use quite often, select tracks to new folder. selected tracks to new folder, I should say, and add a group channel. So it does both these commands with one keystroke, and that's it. Cool, so we're going to stop there. I would suggest you guys explore those key commands and some of those settings to see how you like to set stuff up for yourself. But we're going to move on now and take a look at the user interface of Cubase. I'm going to catch up with you in the next video, and we're going to see where everything is and how everything works in general, and we'll go from there. Catch you then. Cheers. Right, welcome back, guys. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Cubase user interface and just where everything is that you are going to be working with in this DAW. Now, Cubase looks a lot nicer than it used to. It used to be quite messy with, windows all over the place. Everything sort of popped up over the arrange page. They have gradually been moving more towards the sort of one window design, very much like Ableton and Bitwig have. You still have a number of the extra windows, which we'll take a look at as well, that can be overlaid. But for the most part, you can do a lot of what you need to, all within this arrange page window, which is what we have up right now. I'd like to just look at a few of the elements here. You'll see a lot of these elements are kind of repeated throughout different areas of Cubase as well. We've got the menu bar, which we've touched on briefly in the last video. Then you have Cubase's toolbars, and you can see one up at the top here right now, and we've got another toolbar down at the bottom. And you'll see toolbars like this all over inside the editors, in the mixer, and they are all highly customizable and display a lot of important information for you. To customize any of these, and if at any point you see me clicking on something and you don't have it in your Cubase, the chances are it's just simply hidden. If you right-click on any of the toolbars, you'll see that you can decide what goes in any of these toolbars at any given time. You can even duplicate things like the transport controls, for example. We could have those displayed in the top rather than the bottom, and we could vice versa. We could take those out. There's a few differences like the auto quantize and the record modes and stuff are kind of locked in the bottom section here. And you can really just decide, what you want displayed at any given time. You can also move these around as you see fit. Say, for instance, the transport controls that I have here. Let's take the tool buttons off. Let's say I want the transport controls locked on the left. We can move that above this left divider that we have here. Let's say we don't want to divide at all. We could remove that completely. But we do have that. Then it pushes over to the left. We can move the transport controls below that. We could just push them all the way into the middle if we wanted to. It's really up to you how you want to arrange these around. I'm just going to have a look at a few of these tools, though, the default ones that are up here. These are going to be access to your windows. These are also windows that you can access via F keys. Generally, they've got shortcuts, or at least default shortcuts. This would be Media Bay, which is F5. This is going to be where all your samples and things are, which we'll take a look at shortly. This is your pool. We'll talk about that at some point as well. The mixer window pops up there. That's F3. This is control room, which you also have on the right-hand side there as well. And then the direct offline processing as well, which we'll get to at some point. You have track visibility controls here. You can create different configurations here for hiding MIDI or audio, or whatever you want. It's all very customizable. You can turn on BCA tracks, turn them off. Turn on samplers, turn those off, and so on. Mute solo, write automation over there. This is your automation modes. This will open up your automation page here for you. This is important as well, your colorize, so you can make your projects nice and organized. Then we've got quantization stuff happening here. Snap to grid, this is an important one here. If you are not snapping to things, this is where you want to turn that on and off. This is snap to zero crossings. This is useful for audio editing. This is your project root key when it comes to using the chord editors. You can set the root key for the project there. Quantize, I typically have this set to quantize there. I did say we have adapt to zoom, which will adapt the quantize settings to whatever zoom level you're at. I prefer to use the quantize setting because we have the keys set up for that. Or you can snap to beats and bars. We've got our quantize settings here and setup for quantize. And this is where you would set up shuffles and so on and so on. You can also quantize your audio warping as well when it comes to stretching audio. You can apply shuffles and things to that too. And there's a performance meter here, don't have to worry about that. And I would like you to pay a close attention to these on the right, because these controls you're going to see a lot as well throughout the interface. This one is just the MIDI remote mapping. If you want to quickly map a control to something within Cubase, you do it there. But these show hide channel, show hide left zone, these zone controls. You've got these four, which are these sort of quick controls to get these zones up and down. We've got 4 of those. And then you also have this global setup window layout, which is essentially the same, but just condensed to one control there. Now, the channel is new in Cubase 13. That is going to open up the channel that you currently selected on the left zone, pretty much the same way as that you have it set up in the mixer. This is also customizable, so you can right-click this channel section at any time and say Set Up Sections. You can decide what you want displayed here, routing, for example. You can have your EQ in there if you want. Then we have a second left zone, which would be the inspector window. Again, completely customizable. And this can also duplicate a lot of this. You don't need to have these both, but it is quite nice to have the separation between those, because these also display stuff from the editors, which we'll have a look at a bit as well. You can set this up to show whatever you want here. Quick controls, EQs again, note expression. If you want to do chord stuff from here, you can. Then we've got the right zone. The right zone has everything pertaining to your VST rack here. So any instruments that are loaded up will show up here. You have a media section. You can actually load VST instruments from here. If you wanted to, we're in the Sonic Academy list. I've got Kick 2 there. We can just click and drag that in, and it'll load it up. If we go back to our default list here, you'll see you have a number of instruments available to there that can be dragged in and out. Same goes for the effects. Click home, you've got effects in here. You can just drag those onto a channel, and you'll see you now have the bit crusher effect on that. So that's a nice way of working as well. Loops and samples, these are the built-in or stuff that ships with Cubase along with the presets. Your own user presets are here. And then you have a file browser and favorites. Favorites is useful. You can set favorite folders. Let's say file browser, for example. We're going to just look at what's on our computer. It's a standard file browser. The parts that we're going to be using during this course are here. So we could, let's just favorite this right now. We'll say add favorite. And anytime we want to access these parts now, we can just get to them via the favorite section here. Click Sonic Academy there, and all the parts that we're going to want are in there. We've also got the control room set up here. So like I said, we want to turn this control room on, so we have all of this extra functionality rather than just using the default outputs for Cubase. You can flick over to mono if you want here. You can also look at this tab down the bottom. And these tabs you should always look out for. The same on this side. You see you've got editor tabs, visibility tabs. There's a lot of extra functionality there. This insert tab you can actually add, let's say for something like Steinberg supervision. You can have that loaded up on the monitor output, so you can actually see what's going on with your audio, whatever's coming out of the speakers. You can actually reference stuff there on this section. Then lastly, you've got meters there as well. Now let's check out the lower zone. We've got the lower zone on our tool key, because I like to just be able to hide this whenever I need to. By default, the mixer comes up here. So this is the mixer window. All your channels are going to be displayed here. You can flick between different modes for the inserts. You can see the bit crusher effect that we put in there is there. Sends, and then the faders. We can also expand that to show some extra functionality up the top there. We've got this editor page. Now we have no editor open currently. Let's just double click to create a part here. You can see the MIDI editor will come up by default for this one. And also this editor section, you'll notice that now, before we didn't have anything in the editor section. If we go to retrolog, we click editor. And if you go back to mix console, you see there's nothing available here now. But if we go back to the editor section and come down here and select a part, and then click this editor one here, you've got a lot of extra functionality which shows up here pertaining to the MIDI editing. Now this will change depending on what kind of editor you're using. There's editors for Vari audio, for bending vocals and things around. There's editors here for chords. a lot of different stuff that can get displayed here, and it's all kind of context sensitive, depending on what you're doing currently. We've also got sampler control here. I'll just quickly create a sampler track for us. So there is your sampler control section down here. Then we've got chord pads and our MIDI remotes, which we looked at briefly as well. And your various different remotes can be accessed and edited here in this section. Right, and lastly, there's these status and info lines that can be enabled and disabled as well for these. And the transport bar down at the bottom, if you don't want that toolbar and you prefer to have everything up the top, you can do that there. Right, so let's move into the mixer window. We're going to hit F3 to bring up the mixer. So you can see the same mixer information that we have here, but there's a lot more information being displayed now. Very much the same setup. We have the toolbar along the top, as we did before in the arrange page, which again can be modified to suit yourself. We've got the left pane, which is active currently. Again, we can decide what we want active at any time. The left pane basically showing us the list of tracks that we have here. We've got the history, everything that we've done in the mixer. So if you want to move up and undo things, you can do that. Mixer snapshots. And we've got these zone controls here. The zone controls are handy if you, say, for instance, want to just group all your inputs on the left-hand side. We can do that. Now, these are your inputs here. Anything that you're doing in the track will now be in the middle ones here. And we could say our stereo output, let's say we want the main master output synced to the right-hand side. That'll move it over for you there. Now, when you click this window control again, yeah, you'll see that there's actually a lot of additional stuff in here. We can disable everything that's shown on the mixer channels if you want. You'll see almost nothing there now. We can kind of go through these, meter bridge, everything. That's just the clean mixer with no additional stuff. I like to have the channel overview up. The meter bridge you can have up if you want. The channel name, obviously, we want to have that. Equalizer curve, I find extremely useful, so you can just see what's happening on all the EQs, especially if you are doing sort of low cuts and stuff. It's very easy to see what is low cut and what isn't. Hardware, that's pertaining to my hardware, specifically my sound card. That's if you have a Steinberg card, it'll be there. Routing, we're going to want our pre's important. We want to see that. The strip, I typically have that open. You can access the EQs from the strip, but you can also have the EQs by themselves. And yeah, you can just kind of decide exactly what you want available to your channel latency is something I always like to see as well in this section. Right, so we can hit F3 again to close down our mixer. We come back to the arrange page. I also want to just open up the media bay, which is F5, and let's maximize this one. Again, very much the same layout. You have all your media displayed in the middle here. You've got your file browser on the left. This is the attribute inspector. So this is where you do tagging for any of your stuff stored on your drive. You can again access this window control and remove any of these components that you want. The filters at the top, for example, attribute inspector can be folded in and out. And yeah, that is your media bay. We'll take a look at this in a little bit more detail as well. So I think that pretty much covers the general overview of the user interface. Now you know where everything is. We're going to cut it there and let's move on to the next video. I'll catch you there. Cheers. Right, welcome back, guys. This video, we want to start bringing some stuff into our project so we can start making some music here. I want to talk briefly about the media bay and how to import stuff into Cubase. There's a number of different ways you can do this. You can, of course, just drag and drop from the File Explorer directly into the Arrange page, and it will import the audio for you. That applies to MIDI as well. As we looked at in the last video, we do have in the right pane here, we've got the media section. So you can go to your file browser here, or you can go to the favorites like we looked at as well. So this is all a possibility, and this is very handy when you are working. But there is a more powerful way that you could search for things like this as well, and that is the media bay. So I want to just bring that up. This is actually, a lot of this is from the media bay as well. It's the same interface. So we'll just bring up the media bay by hitting F5. And I just want to talk about how you actually scan your drive for sample content that you can use. So I have my samples on this E drive here. What you want to do is you want to come over to your browser here and go to the drive that, or go to the directory that you want scanned, for example. So I have the samples drive here. I haven't currently got this scanned because I'm working with a fresh installation of Cubase, but I can hit any of these to have them, let's say this one here, and it will start scanning these folders for you and adding them to the MediaBay database. And then they will be searchable from within this section here. Close that down, and let's say we wanted to find a kick, for example. Just type in kick, and you'll see all the kicks come up here. Now, you can see some of these have tags. These are tags that I've previously done. Sometimes they may have these tags done from sample libraries that you buy or download from Splice or whatever. They don't always have this. These ones, for example, let's say I wanted to tag these all as a kick. We can just select all of these. And we look at the attribute expector on the right-hand side. Yours may differ slightly here. You can actually set up which tags you want to see at any given time. But I can go here and go category, for example, and we can select drums and percussion. We can say subcategory and choose drums and percussion and kick drum. And you'll see they've all been tagged as kick drums now. So now if I was to be browsing my media library at any time, we can remove this kick search that we have there. I can go and search for drums and percussion, and I can go to kick drum, and all the kicks that are tagged, those are the ones that I just did now, they are not coming up in MediaBay. So it's a really, really powerful way to sort of organize your sample content, and not just sample content. This applies to MIDI files, presets, everything. It can all be tagged within MediaBay. Any media that Steinberg supports. You'll see if you click this top section here. I currently only have audio files selected, but if we were to go to all media types and then look at our Sonic Academy folder, for example, and just remove our tags. This is all the content that we have. We have some MIDI files there. We have some audio. If we looked at our factory content, for example, you'll see we have a ton of preset stuff here. We've got projects even. These are templates. There's a ton of stuff, and you can filter between those by turning things on and off. Turn them all off. And maybe just look at pattern banks, for example. And there you go. Those are pattern banks for the drums. FX chain presets. Yeah, so very, very powerful system. This I would take some time to get this set up when you get going with Cubase. Make sure that you are scanning all the relevant folders with your splice sounds and so on, so that it's all showing up here and you can search for stuff very quickly anytime you need to. Of course, you can, again, use this. We've only got a few samples here that we're going to be bringing in, and we're going to be using it just directly from this MediaBay on this side. And all you need to do to get stuff in is to, for instance, just take what you want, drag it in, and it will create new channels for you. It'll ask you if you want to do one track or different tracks. In this case, we want the different samples on different tracks. Now, this dialog here, very important when you are bringing stuff in. I would suggest you always select this, copy all files to project folder. In doing so, it's going to create a copy. So it will leave this one alone on a drive in the samples drive here, and it'll move the file to the project directory that we're making. This just prevents you from, changing a file that is shared between multiple different projects. You want a clean copy of that every time you do this. So make sure that that is done. And you can do this convert to project settings if necessary. If you're bringing in different sample rates and things like that, you can have it convert automatically for you. We'll just click OK. And there you can see it's brought in 2 audio files for us onto audio channels here. Same goes for MIDI. You can just click and drag, and samples can also be loaded into a sampler directly from here just by right-clicking on this and saying create sampler track, and you'll see it'll actually bring that audio file in on the sampler rather than an audio channel. So that's how you get media in and out of Cubase. We're going to move on to the next video now and start applying this to bringing in some drum sounds and start working on a beat for our track. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers. Right, welcome back, guys. As I said, we're going to start working on a little beat for our track here now. So we're going to be taking a look at drum sounds first. I want to just cover a few different ways that you can bring drum sounds in. My preference is to use the Cubase sampler tracks, but we're going to take a look at Groove Agent as well, which is Steinberg's drum sampler. Let's go ahead and do that first. We'll just right click here to create an add instrument, or you can use the add instrument dialog here. This is actually quite a nice way to do it because you have some extra options that you can fill out here. We're going to go to instrument and we're going to select our Groove agent. Now to get around this, you can just search in this little window at the top here. Groove agent SC, we bring up that. You can also, if at any time you're not finding what you're looking for, just double check that you are in the default plugin list. If you have customized plugin lists like the Sonic Academy one, you'll see obviously when we search for Groove agent, nothing's going to pop up. Or Groove. You'll see nothing's showing up here at all. That's because we're in the Sonic Academy customized plugin list. So as soon as we go back to the default again, you'll see it's available to us there. Right, so MIDI inputs, we can leave that on all MIDI inputs. Stereo output, that's fine. We can name this drum machine if we want, or whatever you want. You have a plugin count, so if you're doing audio channels, this is useful if you want to add multiple channels at the same time. We're just going to add one for now, so that's all fine. And let's add our instrument. Right, so here you go. This is Groove Agent SE, pretty familiar looking layout. Now to build a drum kit here, you simply just drag and drop your samples. You can come in from the media browser that we have here or the media bay if you want. And we can just drag and drop this onto a drum pad here. You'll see that you have a few different options here. This is for layering stuff. You can layer multiple samples on top of each other here. We just want to add one there, and now we have our kick available. I've got some drum pads that line up to this, so my drum pads can control the kick drum there. Let's take a snare, for example, a clap. And let's say we want to layer the snare up here. We could layer the snare by adding it to plus. And you'll see we now have the snare and the clap on the same pad. And let's say we want to do the rest of these all at the same time. We can grab the hats, the shakers, and bring them in and just click this button here. And you'll see it'll sequentially add them to the various pads. Now, in each of these sections, you have control of the pitch, filter, amps, etc., some sample editing stuff that you can do here. You can slice stuff to different pads as well. There are a few benefits to working this way, as well as some negatives as well. The negatives, it takes a little bit more work when you want to do multiple outputs and things. For instance, if you wanted to have a MIDI channel with just your kick, and then you want to have a MIDI channel with just your clap, you can do this by enabling lanes like this. And then you can have multiple lanes, control multiple pads if you want to work that way. So it is possible. These can then be shut down and they all sort of fold into one another. Now when it comes to a multiple outs, you'll see if we bring up our mixer page at the bottom, everything's coming out of the same output. So if we wanted to EQ just the kick, for example, we could do that in the mixer here, but then you are limited to the drum machine plugins. If I want to add external plugins onto that, for example, I'd want it on its own channel. To do that, you're going to have to come over here and go to activate outputs. We can say activate all outputs, and you'll see now all of a sudden we've got outputs for everything. So you can then route specific pads to specific channels. I do find it a little bit cumbersome to work this way, though. The benefits to working like this, one thing is that Groove Agent and Cubase talk very nicely to one another. So when you are, for instance, editing something like this, if you have a drum map selected, it'll open up the drum editor by default. So if you click drum map here, you'll see that you have an option for create drum map from instrument. So it'll actually keep the drum names assigned to the sample names that we have in there. So before we do that, let's just take a look. We have sabigkick.aif. If we come back here and set up our drum map now, and we say create drum map from instrument, watch what happens now when we double click the MIDI part that we have. You'll see we now have the drum editor here as opposed to the MIDI editor. And our file names have all been brought in on the pads there as well. So then we can now go and use this little drum tool here. And we can program our drums like this. There you go. And lastly, similarly, you have MIDI plugins, and again, because Groove Agent lets Cubase know the names of all the samples and so on, if you come over to the inspector pane here, if you're not seeing these MIDI inserts and MIDI modifiers, right-click here and do the setup sections and just enable them in here. We'll click MIDI inserts, and if you open up Beat Designer, it's been given a facelift with Cubase 13. You'll see that you have a MIDI plugin that works very much like a sort of drum machine sequencer. And again, you can see that you have the file names have been brought in here correctly. So we can do whatever we want. We can remove that in the background there, play this back. And there you have your drum sequencer. So that is nice to work like that sometimes, but like I said, I prefer to have individual channels for all my stuff, and I like to use the default Cubase track sampler for everything that I do in Cubase as far as sampling is concerned normally. So we're going to just remove this drum machine channel that we have, and let's get our drums in. So I'm going to select our kick, and just right-click on it here and go create sampler track. And you'll see it just pulls it in immediately, and you've got a kick in your sampler. Now this is a drum sound, and we don't particularly want to play it like an instrument. So what we can do is we can click this button here and say fixed pitch. Now regardless of the root key, it's always going to be locked to the original pitch of the sample. We can also turn on one shot. So even if you are, say if we set our amp to a really slow decay and I play a really short note, you can hear that. If I set to one shot, it'll always play through the entire sample like that. Now, as you can see, that is the amp envelope there. You also have an envelope for the filter. If you enable that, you can change the pitch and so on. Cubase is really, really nice when it comes to these envelopes in that you can sync stuff here. So in the case of a kick, I don't want things to be too long. I don't want it to bleed through into the bass line later on. So I want to just sort of shave off a little bit of the kick on this quickly. We're going to turn on the sync here. And you can see that you can actually sync to bars and beats within the envelope itself. So we'll leave the release like right down, but we're going to pull the sustain all the way down here and sync it to 2/16 or 1/8. And we can create another point here as well. And we now have a kick drum that is basically, most of it is being played in the first 16th note and then fading out. Nice short punchy kick. And that's all set up for us now. So now we can draw in some notes here. We're just going to go with a 4/4 kick. Now you can hold down the Alt key here and you'll see this little pen tool pops up. You can also see that we are currently in 132. I'm going to set my quantize to 1, unless you are on adaptive zoom here. We're going to be on quantize for this, so I can just switch between my different quantize values. We're on 1 now. Hold down Alt for the pen tool and you can click and drag and it'll create a part for you. Otherwise, if you change this loop area, this loop zone, the left and right locators, if you double click within them, it will create a part for you as well. In this case, I want to just have 1 bar. So what I could do is just change the locators to 1 bar like that. And if I ever want to lock my locators to a part, you can hold the P key, which will move them for you. So let's just move them back to the beginning, double click, and that creates a part for us. So let's open this up in the editor down at the bottom. I'm just going to zoom in and we'll go to W now, which is going to be my 1/4 quantize settings. And we can just double click to create some notes here. Same goes for the bottom. If you hold down the Alt key, it'll give you the pen tool. And that's all we need. We can change the velocities. And there's our kick. Okay, so let's continue with this now to bring in a few other sounds. We'll bring in the clap. Again, just right click, create sampler track. We'll just double click to create the clap sound here. Once again, we can come to the sampler control, just make sure that we have fixed pitch for this one. And one shot again. And let's bring in some hats. We'll bring in these shakers. And for the shakers, we're going to switch to 16th notes. And let's change the velocity. So if you don't see the velocity down at the bottom here, you just click this plus sign. And this also gives you options for pitch bend and a whole bunch of other stuff. Any of your MIDI CC, the mod wheel controls can be accessed from down here. It's going to do like a little bit of a gallopy feel for these shakers. And select all of those. Control D will just duplicate sections like that for you. Just a little bit more of the velocity there. You can also play around with the velocity by selecting multiple notes like this, and you can sort of tilt and shift them around a little bit if you want, all at the same time. And we'll just duplicate these again. Here we go. Let's bring in these two hats. We've got that sample. So kind of like an open hat here. We'll bring that one in. And the last hat will do something like this. There you go. We'll bring in the snare as well. I'll see what we do with that later on. Might as well just duplicate one of these. So we'll just do Alt and bring that down. We're keeping things very simple for now. Now we're going to want to copy these out into sort of an 8-bar loop, I guess, or 4-bar loop at least to start. There's a couple of ways you can do this as well. You could grab all of these and hold down the Alt key and manually drag them across. A quicker way would be to either grab all of these and hit Control D again to duplicate them. But there are additional ways as well. If you grab all of these and then grab this little pointer until you get this finger tool, you can just click and drag them across. And you'll see it'll just create duplicates all the way for you. Now, there's a nice little trick with this as well. Each one of these are its own part. So for instance, if we go in here and we delete this kick, you'll see it'll delete the kick just for that one there. We can also instance all these parts. So if we take this again and these little drags that we did before, but we hold down the Shift key, you'll see this time it says shared, repeat count 1. So we can share these across. We'll go all the way to there. And now you see that you have this little equal sign in the top right corner. This means it's instanced. So if we decided, for instance, that we wanted the kick to be something like this, for example, you can see that it has done that now for all of the kicks that have been instanced here. And you'll see it's scrolling with my playhead now. We can actually turn that off. So turn off auto scroll. So again, we can change stuff here. So a really nice way to kind of just play around with stuff and just have everything update automatically as you are changing it across all these parts. And so let's say, for example, as well on the end here now, you want to have something different, but you don't want to have it instanced. You can then just create another copy of this one here. You'll see it won't be instanced now. So this one we could do something different if we wanted to have a little fill here. There we go. And we can then instance these across too. So always just keep an eye out for those little equal signs. And then if those instance things, you don't want them anymore and you are happy with this, we can use our paste tool, which would be number 4. And you can see up at the top, if we enable our tools again, it's this one right here. And we can just paste all of these together and that'll collapse the instance things together. And we have everything in one part there now. Great, so we've got some basics down here. We've got some drum sounds into our project. Let's move into the next video. I'll catch you guys in a second. Cheers. All right, welcome back, guys. So while we're busy with the drums, I want to talk a little bit about working with loops. So we're going to bring in a drum loop, and I want to just show you a couple of ways that you can deal with this. We have one available here in the project file. So let's just go to this percussion loop. And we can drag that in as audio into our project. Again, copy file to folder, and we'll say OK. Now, you see in this case, it has brought it in stretched by default, which is fantastic. So if we played this back now, it should all be in sync. When you are listening and auditioning files as well, let's just mute these parts here. You can choose to actually align beats to project when listening to the stuff in the media bay. See, now it's completely out. If we align that in, it'll always be synced. So you can go through various different loops and everything will be synced to your project within here. If you wanted to turn off the looping for whatever reason, this will be available in the pool. Now, the pool is a good thing to know about. If you hit Control P, any file that gets brought into your project, or any file that's part of your project, as far as audio is concerned, and video as well, I should say, will be available here. So you'll see everything that we've brought in at any point in this track that's been copied to our project file or folder is in here. So the percussion loop that we have here, you'll see you have this musical mode engaged. If you turn this off, you'll see that this is now unsynced and it is now not stretched correctly to the project tempo that we have. We'll leave it off like that for now. Then you also have the sampler track. All the stuff that you brought in for the sampler is there. If you wanted to stretch an unsynced piece like this, there is a tool that we're going to be using. If you look at the toolbar at the top here, you'll see some of these have a little notch out of them. This means that there's an additional control behind that. So if you click on that again, it'll give you normal sizing, sizing moves content, and sizing applies time stretch. This is the one that we're after. Another way that you can access that is just by hitting the one key repeatedly. So that is the moves content, that is applies time stretch, and that goes back to normal. So it'll just scroll through the various different tools for you. Now all you need to do is grab this little corner here and time stretch it, and it'll be in sync again. You'll see it's turned musical mode back on automatically when you did that. So that's one way to work with loops, and in this case, it's going to be absolutely fine. I think it sounds good working like that, but I'm going to just bring in this loop again on another channel here, and you'll see this is unsynced now this time around. Let's double click on this audio to open up the audio editor at the bottom, and look in your inspector view here. And you'll see the editor has now been selected by default. And we've got a bunch of stuff in here that we can select. So we've got definition, we've got the audio warping. And this audio warping will be available on this one here too. If you double click on this one, you'll see audio warp. You can change the audio warping algorithm that it uses and so on. But let's come back to this one again now. Double click on that to bring up this section. Audio warp will turn off. We're going to go down to hit points. Now you have a threshold here that you can drag up and down, and you'll see it'll create hit points on the starts of each of these drum hits within the loop. Now there's a couple of things that we can do with this. We can go and say create slices. And what it's done now is it has cut all of these on the loops and then set the start points to bring them directly onto that and then shifted them over so that everything is synced. So let's play that back now. So it's another great way to sync stuff is by chopping them up into loops like this. And then, of course, the added bonus with this is that you can affect these separately by adding fades or even different effects on each one of these hits. So that's the slicing option. And additionally, you can also do this within a Cubase sampler. So let's, we'll just remove that track and we'll add this loop once again using the create sampler track. And now we have a loop assigned to a sampler. Obviously, this is not the functionality that we want. We don't want to be pitching this up. What I'd like to do is I'd like to slice this and then control it via MIDI instead. So what we can do is down at the bottom here, we can go to slice and turn slice on. You'll see what it's done here is exactly what it did before in the audio editor. It's sliced up the audio according to this threshold. You can change this threshold to make it more detailed if you want, but we just need those 4 hits. Once it's done, it's sliced, and you'll see it has mapped those to the keys. So as I go through these now, it's playing back those hits, and each of these can have filter controls and so on you can set up. Now, if you want to get this into the project, we just need a MIDI part. So all you have to do is drag this little MIDI icon, click and drag it, and drop it in here, and you'll see it has your MIDI part for your loop in here now too. We play that back again. Perfectly synced up. Right, so that's 3 ways that you can work with audio loops, particularly for drum sounds. The slicing option is typically a really good way to do things. Sometimes it'll work better just by time stretching it as well. It's really up to you. Right, let's cut that there, and we're going to move on to the next video. I'll catch you in a sec. Cheers. All right, welcome back, guys. Now, I want to just hit pause for a second here and talk a little bit about gain staging before we continue to add synth parts and bass lines and so on. We've just been chucking stuff into Cubase from the media browser, and we haven't been paying any attention to the volume that's coming out. So let's just click our meter over here and put play. And you can see we are completely right up to 0. This is pretty typical when you're using sampled content. A lot of sample providers normalize the samples, and when you start chucking stuff together, it just goes through the red instantly. Now, gain staging is the process of making sure that your levels don't go into the red. You know, everything from the start where the sample is right through to the mixer output, everything should be checked so that thing is going in the red at any given point of this chain that it runs through. So I want to just talk about setting levels basically with Cubase before we continue with anything else. Now, we can open up our mix console down at the bottom here and make sure that you have the faders selected. There's a few different ways that we can do this. We want to turn all of these down and so that it's a little bit more manageable at the output. Now, one way that we could do this is to put them in a folder and create a group. We had a shortcut for that, if you remember, Control-Shift-F, which adds a folder track and then creates a group for these. If we do that, you'll see we now have a group, and we can turn on the group channel, and our output is now significantly softer. But we haven't changed the levels for any of the actual drum parts themselves. Just re-enable all of these. Cool. So you see these all still at full volume, and this is a good idea as well, because you don't want to be running these too far down. You lose the resolution of the faders. So this is one way to do it. If you didn't want to do it this way, we'll remove this group. And now you may have to also just check that these ones, now that we've removed that group, they were all routed to that group. In removing that group, they are now not routed anywhere. So if we play this back, you'll see we have nothing going to the stereo out here. You're going to want to select all of these and hit stereo out. Now you see, when I had them all selected, they still have no bus. And this is a really, really important thing to remember with Cubase. If you ever want to apply anything across the board to a multiple selection, you can apply anything to multiple selections by holding down Shift and Alt, and then we click stereo out, and watch what happens now. they are all set to 0 out. So this is really important to remember. It'll solve a lot of problems for you. So now they should all be back to where they were before. And now we're back to clipping again. So I want to show you another way to deal with this, and that's to drop all the faders. And we can select all of these again, and we're going to use quick linking for this. Now you could hold Shift-Alt again, and once again, this applies to everything in Cubase. Shift-Alt will always apply the same thing when you have multiple things selected. You can also activate quick linking for this. So if you click this little section here and open up this additional bar, and you have this in the mixer window too, enable Q-Link, and now you can move your faders all at once and set your levels. Now what's great about this as well is it adjusts the faders in relation to one another. As you see, if I have different volumes set here and then decide to change all of them, you'll see how they sort of adjust in relation to one another. So these ones adjust much quicker because the volume difference is bigger. So I want to just show you the last way of doing this, and I prefer this way. Actually, it's probably the best way to do this. Rather than adjusting the faders, now you can use the faders for adjusting volume after the fact, but you really want to gain the samples down here. So Cubase does have gain controls per each track as well. If you open up the channel window here, you'll see on this equalizer page, you have a pre-section with a gain control. So we'll play this back and we'll take a listen to the kick. We're not adjusting the fader, we're adjusting the gain. And this is before the kick is getting into any of the inserts here or into the EQ. It's right at the beginning of the stage. So you can adjust the gain for that there. Yours may look a little bit different initially because you can change this from the slider mode to the knob mode. I prefer the knobs personally in this page here, so you can set that like this if you want. We'll just go back there because we've changed the gain for just the kick. So like before, we can select all of these. And in this case, I'm going to hit Q-Link here. Open up our kick once again. Let's adjust the gain now. And now we're in a more respectable level here just by adjusting the gain, and we haven't really played around with the faders at all. So this is my preferred way of doing the gain staging. Now we're in the right area here. Just lastly, we can see that on the mixer window as well with the quick link active and these selected once again. If you adjust the gains, they all adjust at the same time. Now you can also do this with VCA faders. We are not going to get into that. You can actually create a control fader channel which will control all of these, and then they are actually permanently linked. You can also at any time permanently link any of these by right-clicking on these and say link selected channels, and this will create a permanent link for any of these setups that you have here. Any EQ changes will be the same on all of them. Any panning controls, depending what you link here. And then you can also create the VCA faders here if you want. Okay, so that's another way. We're not going to cover that though. Q-Link and the Shift-Alt command is more than enough for now. Right, so that's just a little bit of basics about the mixer. Lastly, I want to just talk about folders. We did create a folder track here. It's a great way to organize stuff. You can have folders within folders. But in this case, we've created our folder track here. Now you can do that via this plus thing here as well and create a folder like this. Once we've got a folder like we have here now and we have everything inside, we can also color parts. And these are all drum parts. So let's go and just color our drum parts blue, for example. We could also give our kick a different color there. And then we can rename the folder. We'll rename this drums. And we can also rename our channels here. And just show you a handy little trick just for keeping things organized when you are renaming parts here as well. If you rename this kick, for example, you'll see this just renames the channel name. If you rename this and hold down Shift and Enter, you'll see it will actually rename every single part within that as well as kick. So again, if you wanted to change this to clap, hold down Shift, Enter, and it'll change all of the parts as well at the same time. Cool, so let's cut it there. We're going to get down to creating a lead sound in the next one. Let's start playing with some synths and get down to the fun stuff. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers. Right, welcome back, guys. This video, we're going to start getting into some melodic elements for this track. We're going to create a very simple trance pluck sound using one of Cubase's built-in synthesizers called Retrolog, and then create some chords and work on a melodic idea for this track. So first things first, I want to just set the tempo to about 126, I think. Great, there we go. So let's get a sound going first. I'm going to create a new instrument here, and we're going to just say instrument, and let's grab Retrolog, which is Cubase's analog style synthesizer. There's Sonic as well, which is a rompler, which will be your sort of bread and butter sounds, pianos, strings, all that kind of stuff. We may use that later on, as well as PadShop Pro, which is another great synth that comes with Cubase. But for now, we'll add Retrolog as a new channel. Right, so we've got the default sound, and let's just turn down the volume slightly. I'm actually going to just enable the pre's on here, so we can just turn down the gain directly on this section, which is nice and easy. We don't have to open up any additional windows. Great, there we go. And let's make a super saw kind of sound here. We'll change oscillator 1 to a multi-wave, and then we'll turn this up to about 4. And then change the detune to about 7. That's pretty good. Let's bring the filter down to about 200 there somewhere, and then turn up the filter envelope. We're going to leave it on the LP24 setting. And now what we can do is we can just change the filter envelope here. We'll bring down the sustain decay to about halfway, and let's bring up the release time about halfway, and then the amp release time about halfway as well. That's pretty good. Cool. So I do have some MIDI parts that we are going to aim for, but I'm going to recreate them now as well. I want to take a look at some of the chord pad functionality within Cubase, because it's nice to play around with to get some ideas. Before we bring in this, let's bring in MIDI first. So to bring in MIDI, you can just come over to the right-hand side where we have our media types and stuff again, and bring in the MIDI. You can just drag and drop MIDI, and you'll see it come straight in. And we're just interested really in this part here. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and you'll see it changes to a scissors to cut. Let's make sure that we are set to 1 to 1, so bars, and let's just cut there, and we'll cut an 8-bar loop. That's going to be the chord progression that we're aiming to recreate here. I'll bring that across. So this is what we're going to be aiming for, something like this. Cool. Let's just fix that one there. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to extract the chords from this so that we can mess around with this in the chord pad editor and also the chord editor in the MIDI editor. So one way to do this is you can just click on this and right-click here and say Create Chord Events. And we'll click OK. And you'll see it's extracted the chords and created a new chord track. We'll just bring this down so we can see what's going on there. And these are the chords and our song's key that we're in B major. Now if we come back to Retrolog here, we can actually move this one over again now, and let's just create a blank part here, and also open up the lower zone and go to chord pads. Make sure that this is turned on, and now any track that we have record enable on for, you'll see we can play chords just by playing the keys. So it's this lower octave down at the bottom here. I've got a preset here called Astral Synth Plucks currently. You can try these out. There's a whole bunch of different ideas there that you can play with. Just banks of chords that you can mess around with, not unlike Anna's chord editor as well. some interesting ideas you can come up with there now, but I actually want to just bring in the chords that we have so we can mess around with those. You can actually just drag these in here. And now, when you come back to Retrolog, that's pretty much what we are working with. So we could start to sequence. If we have our chords in here that we've worked with, we can play around with these a little bit further if we want. You've got the chord editor here. So we could decide we might want to add some tensions to this. Just different ideas. You could also play around with the voicings by clicking here. And once you're happy with these, you can start dragging them into your project. So you can just put this in here, or literally just drag these that you have here in this, drag them up here as well, and you'll see it'll create chord parts for all of this. Now we can paste these together. And we've got all those chords in here now. Okay, we'll fix this one so we can just see some MIDI editing in action as well. It's not quite doing exactly what we want there. But I also want to just show you some of the MIDI editing, the chord stuff available in the inspector now as well in Cubase 13. So we can actually remove the chord track now. We can have this follow the chord track too. In this B major scale, we could use the chord track and have this snap to pitch editing so that any of our live input that we have and there we go. So I've got this set to my B major scale now, so anything I play is going to be in the correct scale. Now I'm playing notes kind of just randomly across the keyboard, and they all are syncing to this B major scale that we have because I have pitch editing and snap live input enabled here. We can play around with some chord editing stuff here as well. This is very much like the audio editor section that we had. When you double click on a part in the inspector, it gives you all these additional settings that you have. You've got quantize, you've got some transpose key settings here as well. And then you've also got the chord editing. So we could decide that we want to change some of these around as well by messing around with these. You could play around with, say, dropping the notes, for example. Let's say drop 2 and 4, and then move up. You can do that with multiple ones too. Let's say move all of these up. So interesting stuff that you could do here using this chord editor. And you can also just add new chords in as well directly from here. So if we wanted a minor chord, we could just click on this one and say we wanted a, let's say an A flat minor over here, and it'll create one for you. It's a very simple, easy way for adding chords in. So let's leave that alone now and just get into fixing some of this quickly. So we'll just do this in the MIDI editor. I'm happy with that. Okay, so let's mess around with this one. Now to move notes around, we can very easily just use the arrow keys. These last two bars, I think, should actually be back to our original C sharp minor that we had there. There we go. And I just realized that this is actually playing as well on top of this. We can actually just remove this chord track now. We're not using that. I actually may prefer that one to start on the bar there. Now I wanted to show you a neat little trick for creating a little bit of movement in chords like this. Now these are useful to have for maybe some string parts or something later on. So we will keep these. I'll just duplicate that and move them over. But I want to create sort of an eighth note stab for these now. So a really useful way of doing this in Cubase is if we select our cut tool, a lot of the tools have modifiers to them. So sorry, let's select this. And I should also mention that the tools at the top are independent from here. So you'll see we can have an arrow here and a cut tool when we're here, and we come back and the arrow is the same. So just make sure that this is selected, and then 1, 2, 3 will be your cut tool. Now you can use modifiers for these. So in this case, there's a really handy little modifier with a cutting tool that if you select an eighth note here, so we've got 16ths currently, so 2 16ths. If you hold down the Alt key, it'll cut the remainder of the notes into eighth portions as well. So we can just click there, and now we've got that happening. And select this chord, we'll just click there, and you see what we are doing by segmenting these like that. Now I can play this back again. And let's do these two. And these. And these. So a really quick way to kind of get some sort of rhythmic parts into your chords. And let's maybe mess around that last chord there. Come back to the original. Bring those down rather. And we'll change that voicing here too. So there what I was doing is rather than just hitting the arrow keys, I'm holding Shift and it'll move down an octave by doing that. And there we go. I'm happy with that now. That's our chord progression that we have. So we can move on to some other elements now. I'm going to catch you in the next video and we'll carry on from there. Cheers. Right, welcome back, guys. We're going to put a bass part into our track now. We're going to do things slightly differently just to show you as much as possible here. We're going to use a different instrument. We're going to use Sonic for this one, and then I'll record the bass in live and show you a few things on how to do that. First things first, let's just create a new channel. So we'll just create a new instrument channel here, and we'll have Sonic selected. We'll click Add Track. Now, Sonic is sort of great for bread and butter sounds, as I've mentioned. There are some other built-in synths into this as well, like Flux, which is a wavetable synth, very capable as well. And surprisingly editable as well. There's quite a lot that you can do with these different layers and positions of the wavetables and so forth, different wavetables that you can select from here. So they are pretty good little synths, these. We're not going to get into the editing of this, though. We're just going to use the Hallian's search engine to find something suitable for what we're wanting to do here. So let's just click on this and select all again. We're going to go to category. We're going to choose bass, and we're going to choose synth bass. And this will show all these synth basses that we have available. There's quite a lot of them here. I'm going to click sub just to kind of narrow this down a little bit. This is everything that has the word sub in it. And we can listen to some of these. I'm going to use this one, just something really simple that we can play around with. We'll just change this up slightly. You'll see some of these are based on, like this one, for example, is based on Trium, which is a instrument, a Hallian instrument, which has its own interface here, and a predator and everything included in that as well. This one is one of these sort of stock standard Hallian instruments, this. So its interface isn't quite as nice, but there's still some stuff that you can change around here. For example, we can go over to the filter here and change our filter type to tube drive, for example, and add a little bit of grit to it. And you can actually have multiple filters in this as well. You can see our oscillators are straight up analog patch from Hallian. This we can change the amp envelopes and so forth as well. But we're not going to worry too much about that. I'm pretty happy with the sound just as is like that. Let's close this down and get some notes in here. Now, I do want to just explain recording as well, so we're just going to play this in. And we're just going to record that live rather than copying those parts down, and just to show you how it's done. So you want to make sure that your channel that you're recording onto is record enabled. And we're probably going to want to auto quantize this, so we'll set down at the bottom to auto quantize. So anything playing in is going to get quantized as it's played, and you want to make sure that you set your quantize correctly over here as well. So we set into 16ths, that's fine. We could actually go to 8ths if we wanted to. And that's what we're going to be playing in. We also want to set up our metronome. Now, you may sometimes run into an issue where you are turning on the metronome down at the bottom here, and it doesn't sound at all. So let's hit solo. And you hear that the metronome is not doing anything for us right now. So let's set up the metronome for recording. We're going to come over to the control room, and you'll see that there's a metronome thing here. We need to route the system metronome from here into the control room so we can hear it. It is actually on now, but it's not sending the click anywhere. Once we activate it there, you'll be able to hear it in the control room now. And we can play this back now. Perfect. We can also set up the metronome a little further if we go and click on this edit button down here. You can customize this a little bit to your heart's content. We can activate the metronome, click there, we can use audio MIDI. We will add a 1-bar count in, I think, for this one. Let's go to click sounds. We can change up the click sounds. Well, if you don't like that default one, we can go and change this to something else, maybe a stick, for example. There's a number of different. My preference is for that vintage spike. We've also got record modes down at the bottom here. So start recording at project cursor, add left locator, punch in position. I prefer to have it at the left locator, so we know that we're going to record this section there. Regardless of where my cursor is, could be here, it'll always jump back to the locator now when I start recording. I've got auto quantize on. This stuff we don't have to worry about. Merge, replace. Typically you want to new parts or merge. I don't like replacing stuff. And I think that's fine. We're good to go now. So let's just come here and hit record. And there you go. Your parts are recorded in. We can take a look at those. You can also view these together so you can make sure that there's no errors and things happening in here. Let's come down to the bottom and see that one. Played a wrong note in that one. And here as well. So we could just correct those. Move that one up. And that one there as well. We're slightly off. Cool, so that's the bass. I want to also just do a little bit of additional editing with these now. So if we select all of these, a great little tool that you can use here is to right-click and go to Functions and set this to fixed lengths. So there we go. It's set them to fixed lengths now. They're all eighth notes currently. That's what we have selected. If we select it to 16th notes, for example, and then set functions fixed length, it'll go to 16th notes. Then you can just drag them out again. Just they're all exactly the same length now. We can also do right-click here and go to functions fixed velocity as well to remove any of the velocity sensitivity that we had from the keyboard space. We want to keep it fairly stable, so that's fine. There we go. This isn't it with the drums in again. Cool. But so before we move on, one last thing I wanted to just talk about now that we were recording in live stuff here, and that's retrospective recording. So we've done our recording, but sometimes you just want to mess around. And let's just say we were playing with some ideas here. Whatever, just random stuff, and let's say you just happen to come across something that you really like there. This little button down here, you'll see that's just suddenly lit up, and Cubase is constantly recording what you do. So you've got this retrospective recording that if anytime you do something and you like what you heard, just hit that and it'll pull it in for you, and you'll see it's automatically brought that in. Cool, and there you go. So just always remember, anytime you hear something you like that you stumble across when you are messing around with sounds like this, retrospective recording will often just save that for you and you can bring it in. It's a really nice little feature to have. Right, so that's our bass part that we've put in there. We may change this up as we go, but let's get a move on and head into the next video. I'll catch you then. Cheers. Right, welcome back, guys. We're going to talk a little bit about audio editing again here. We're going to bring in our additional audio files that we have out of this collection here. The sweeps and drops in particular, these effect sounds. So first things first, let's just bring them into our project. I'm just control clicking on these to select all of them, and we can just drag and drop them in. Once again, different tracks for these, and copy them to your folder. Right, so I also did import them now, specifically with this disabled align beats to project. So you can see none of them have been brought in time stretched. I'm going to keep them untime stretched for now. Set my tempo back to 126 again. Yeah. Now some of these are at 126 currently, so they don't need to be time stretched. This one not. So the first thing I want to just look at here is setting start and end times as well as snap points for audio. You can see obviously if we start moving this one around now, it's never going to end where I want it to. So you could reduce the quantize, for example, and then try and do that, or turn the quantizing off, but then you're kind of just eyeballing it. So what you want to do is open up the audio editor for this in the bottom here. You see you've got an event end. The event end is basically controlling the end of the audio. So that's where the audio's file is going to stop. The same goes for the sample start or the event start that we have down there. Make that one right to the end. But then you've got this little S down at the bottom. This is the snap point for the event. So let's say I want this to end on that bar there. We can just bring this across and make sure that that snaps on the end there. And now you can see when I click this to move it, it's snapping with this exactly on the end of the bar, even though this is not on that one there. So that works great for me. So that's perfect. What I do like to do is just keep things organized. Maybe you can snap that across. Another way to keep this nice and neat and tidy is once you have snapped these into place like that, I like to often keep things, especially working traditionally with electronic music and so on, I like to keep things in little blocks. So in fours, for example, because if I wanted to duplicate this one as it stands, it's going to not duplicate it to where I want it to. So especially if this is off. If we do this, it's going to continuously be off and get worse and worse if we are just duplicating. So to rather avoid having to alt and drag and copy it, I like to have things like this into blocks. You just create a blank block by holding down alt and you'll get the pen tool. You'll create a blank event there. And then you can paste the two together. And now you have the audio in an event. So we have the event, and inside we have an audio file, and you can kind of move things around within this one. Arrange your audio files in there. And then this is always nice and neat within 4 bars, so we can duplicate those as we see fit. And they'll always be in time. Cool. Now, I also wanted to just quickly talk about fades, for example. You see this one is now a little bit too long. You can obviously reduce the length of this one, but we may want to shorten this even further using a fade. So using this top right corner here, you can click and drag that across and you'll get a fade on this. We can also just double click just on or above this line here and you'll get the fade editor. And this will allow you to do things like create different shaped fades. You can do this manually if you want as well, and create quite complex ones. And this also applies to crossfading. So if we were to, say, duplicate this one, we can crossfade between the two, like so. And double click again, and you can actually have edits of all the crossfades too, and do quite complex different crossfades between different sounds. We can do another example of this now and show off another feature in Cubase, which you'll use a lot. And that's the bounce audio. Now, this is not rendering a new file. This is for when you want to, say, for instance, create a copy of something and apply a different fade to one of them and actually make it permanent. So, for example, we've got this this fade on this one now. If we wanted to make this permanent, we could right-click and go to bounce selection. It's going to create a new file. And this is not creating a new file with the plugins on it. It's not rendering the audio. It's just creating a new file with any fades and edits that we have on it. Now, vice versa, if we were to copy this one, and let's say we wanted to reverse something, we can go to reverse here by going to process. Now, usually if you click reverse now, you're going to get a dialog box that says, are you sure you want to do this? Can you continue or create a new file? I have set mine to always create a new file, so it won't even give me that dialog box anymore. I would suggest you do the same. I prefer to create new files every single time. In the case that you were not creating a new audio file and you hit reverse, it would actually reverse both of these, because they're essentially the same audio file. This one, no, because this has the fade that hasn't been applied. This one was copied to here, and if you reverse this without creating a new file, it would actually reverse both of these. So if you were to bounce this one and then reverse it, you wouldn't have that issue at all. But since I've disabled that dialog box now by choosing new version and then say never ask me this again, I can go here and I can reverse that file, and then I can do something like put a crossfade in there. Select those two, and there you go. Now we've got a new audio event there. Now we could bounce this one again. I've got a shortcut key for that. And now you have another new file. And now we've created ourselves an additional little sweep here that we could use. Add some extra fades to that one. But it's another important thing I want to show you guys just when it comes to audio editing like this. You've seen a number of these things that can be done with dragging handles to change volume or to add fades and stuff. You can do this via the info line as well. Now, if you don't have this available to you right now, you can go over here and click this window layout again, as we've discussed. Make sure that the info line is in fact enabled. It displays quite a bit of important information here. While you edit, you can open up the overview as well, because that's nice for when you start arranging your tracks. But the info line, you'll notice whenever you have an event selected, you can do things like mute, whatever. If I wanted to put this into musical mode again to have it time stretched, you can turn that on and off here. You'll notice that's a very easy way to do that, also via this little icon down here, or via the pool like we did before. You can click this on and off for the respective audio file. You can also transpose audio from here. If you're working with tonal stuff, you can just shift the audio file up and down in tone there. And then you've got some other stuff like fade outs and things like this that you can actually do more precisely. If you wanted to do exactly a 4-bar fade out, you could do that. If you wanted to do a slightly more precise one there, you can move that. We can also do volume, and you can type in the volume here rather than having to just click and drag it down. We could say exact values like 1.6 dB if you wanted to. That would drag the volume down for that. And then also invert phase, and you can actually change the file name, and not the name of the part here, the actual file name of the audio. You can change that here too. Obviously, this also applies to MIDI parts as well. If you click a MIDI event, you get some transpose controls, mute, etc., and you can actually adjust the velocity here as well. Right, so just a couple of little editing things in Cubase that I think are important to know. We're going to start arranging now. So let's move into the next video. We're going to take a look at the arranger track first, and then start looking at automation to kind of just build up the skeletons of this track. I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers. Right, welcome back, guys. We're going to start working on an arrangement for our track. We're going to do very, very basic arrangement, just to kind of get a feel for where things are going to go. I do want to just show you the arranger track because there's some cool functionality in this for when you want to play around with arrangements. Let's go to add track here, and we're going to add a arranger track. While we add it with these different tracks, there are a number of different ones. A tempo track, for example, which will allow you to change tempos. You can have a ramp or stepped tempo. You can see currently it won't work. You'll have to turn on the tempo track here. So you can dial in different tempos. Also ramp these, for example, and do sort of tempo ramps and such. So there's a number of these additional track types in Cubase. Marker channels as well. But we're interested in this arranger chain, and we're also going to add in a ruler as well. Just want to show you that one too, because this is handy to have. You'll see the ruler now by default is set to seconds, so I can keep this bar on bars and beats all the time. You can have seconds here too, or time code if you're working with film. I like to have that set to bars and beats for working with music, but I do also like to have a readout of where I am in the track, as opposed to having to look down at the bottom here at the times for the playhead or where the playhead's at. Because the playhead might be here, but I want to know that down here is a minute, when I'm starting to arrange and so on. So that's a handy one to have open. Let's take a look at the arranger track now. You'll see if you hold down Alt to bring up our pencil tool, we can drag and draw little parts here. These can, of course, be colorized if you want. They can also be named, which would be a good idea. So let's, for starters, let's just quickly move some of this stuff over. We'll just move our drums and our melodic parts and our effects down here. And let's say we can call this part intro, for example. And we could drag in some stuff here. And let's say maybe let's just bring in the kicks. And we'll bring in our retrolog part here. Now I'm also just going to quickly edit this MIDI for this initial part. We're going to actually not have the chords playing the whole way through. We'll just have that chord. So we can just duplicate this one. There we go. And this would be our intro. A little 8-bar loop here. And then we'll have, say, intro 2. We could label this one as such. And then we could build on this for intro 2 here. We can add that, maybe bring in our loop as well. And we will do some automation for this to make more sense eventually. We'll bring in some of our effects bits. Move this one over here and maybe bring in the sidechained one. And then we can bring this one in here. And we'll have a bit of a build up here for this part. Right, so we're getting a rough arrangement and we're labeling this as such. And this is just a really good way to kind of just label and give you an idea of where you want to go. We could call this then break, for example, break 1. We'll call this build 1, for example. And we can recolorize these again. But you'll see now when we have our track selected here, it works almost a little bit like Ableton's performance mode here. You can jump between parts really easily. So you could actually build a bunch of different little loops and ideas around that don't make much sense, and then play around with the arrangements a little bit here when you're busy just trying to get some ideas. You'll see you have a jump mode here. So with jump mode set to end, if we were to say split this guy, reduce this one to just one section there. Now we have this A in here as well. We can say we can play A from here and then tell A to jump to our next one. So we'll play A and then we'll jump to build 1. We can also set this to 1 bar. There you go. It's just a really cool way to kind of get around and mess around with ideas, especially, if you're working with slightly more traditional song structure like a chorus and a verse. You can also just navigate your track really easily like this as well. So you can continue to sort of map out. What I find this is particularly useful for as well is if you are kind of stuck for ideas and you are to bring in a reference file that you want to kind of copy the arrangement slightly of. You can load up the reference file below the arranger chain and just kind of flesh out the rough shape of the track, where the builds are, where the main bits are. We'll say this will be main loop here. And we can say main loop build, for example. Might carry this on a little bit longer, but we could also just jump straight into, let's say, the break again, yeah. And we can call this one break 2. And you get the idea. You can continue like this to kind of flesh out the majority of the track, and it just gives you a nice sort of idea of where things go. So we can just quickly copy these across. And we'll break there, for example. We may want to stagger some of the stuff a little bit more. So this percussion loop is a duplicate. So maybe we didn't want to bring in the shakers initially. Yeah, and we'll keep it really simple like that, and then we can bring this across and drop this guy in here. And there our sort of rough arrangement is coming together. We'll obviously add in some more parts here and take a look at the automation in a little bit. But one last little thing I want to show you here is, so you've got these utility tracks in the top here. These might not always want these here. And the other problem as well is if we are working on a track, we come down like this, you can't actually always see them. And there are times that I want this available to me at all given times. So there's a nifty little feature here in the arrange page. You can actually split the arrange page in half. If you come over to this little button here, it says divide track list. We'll hit that. And you'll see that now you can actually pull the track list down. And you can have whatever you want on either side. They both play concurrently together. But this one can be sort of hidden away if you want to. So we can leave all our utility stuff in here if we want. We can bring this seconds one and just drop that in there. And then just sort of reduce that in size. And the bottom one now scrolls independently to that one. So we will always be able to see what we have on that top one there. So just a nice little extra tool that you can use for ease of use. Cool. Let's cut it there and let's move into the next video because I want to start looking at automation so we can start making things make sense in this track. I'll catch you in the next video. See you then. Cheers. Right, welcome back, guys. I want to take a look at the basics of automation in this video while we are busy structuring our track. Now, one of the most sort of important things for me when it comes to automation is filters. And we're gonna look at automating a couple of filters, both in our instruments here and some of the filters in the pre-section, because you actually do have filters on every single channel in Cubase without actually having to open up the EQs or add inserts. So that's basically what we're going to be doing here, just playing around with filters to kind of smooth out our arrangement. Right, so let's look at how you do this first. You'll see this little R and the W on all of these tracks, as well as up at the top here, as well as when you open up an instrument, for example, you'll have a read and write automation here. Now, read's great. That'll be on as soon as automation data is in there. You can turn it off if you want to suspend the reading of the automation at any given time. What we're most interested in here is the write automation. Now, Cubase's automation is pretty simple to get going. For this, for example, we're going to start off with automating this cutoff filter here. So all we're going to do is just hit write automation, and you could opt to record this live. Most of the time what I do is I'll just hit play and just record just a small section like that, and then turn off write. And in doing so, what it's done is create an automation lane for us, and then we can go ahead and delete that automation there and start drawing it out as we see fit. You can see retrolog filter automation. I want to just so you can see alternate ways of doing this. If you right click on this and you can say show automation from this, and you'll see by default we have a volume automation here. If you click this, you can actually go through all of the various different things that you can automate. You've got more here, and everything from the MIDI channel stuff, all the modifiers, the CC values. They can all be found here. You can filter, I mean, you could look for it here. Cutoff, there's the filter cutoff for retrolog. So that is all available to you there. Like I said, it's much easier to just go into the actual instrument and wiggle a knob when write automation is turned on. Or you could right click this and say add filter cutoff to automation track. So we'll show filter cutoff for automation track. So if you do this, you'll see it'll automatically bring that up. And we can remove the volume there. Right, so when it comes to the automation now, we just have to drag and drop various bits of automation everywhere. So we can now start drawing in lines like this. If you grab this little middle section here, you can draw in curves. And you can move the curves and make them more sort of slanted or steeper like this. The curve editing in Cubase is actually very nice. You also have these sort of global controls for bending and warping automation. If you have, let's say, we'll just freehand draw in a whole bunch of sort of more complex stuff here. If you were to select all of these, you could, again, decide you wanted to squash them down a little bit more, or turn them a little bit more into a ramp this way. Again, compress, uncompress, move them up and down. Lots of different stuff that you can do with them. And then also another cool little feature is if you go to this line tool here, you'll see the line tool very much like the time stretch where you just keep repeating through, or you have this sort of multiple selection of different tools under one tool there. The line tool, you actually have some shapes. So we could say go with the sine wave, and you can draw in sine automation like this. Cool. So let's just remove that, and we'll just go back to our bog standard automation editing here for this guy and start drawing this in. That's going to be too quick for us. We want to keep it down for this initial part. In fact, we'll probably start going up here. We're actually going to want to, I think we're going to go down there again. So we'll drop this down right before we get to, just as we go into that drop there. And what we'll do is we'll add a second automation lane here now. So what we can do is open up our channel window here. And I mentioned that we have filters on every single channel. So in the pre-section here, where we've adjusted our gain before, you'll see you have this LC and HC. This is a sort of pre-filter for your track. It's an EQ, essentially. We can turn this on. I use these a lot in Cubase. You could also do this with a filter plugin if you wanted to as well. There is one built into Cubase called Morph Filter, which is handy to have. You'll see we have high pass filters here, and then if you put this to 100%, you'll be in high pass mode, which is filter B, and low pass mode, which is filter A. So you can morph between the two. But we wanted to add a bit of a high pass into this section there. So we could do it either way. Let's use the pre-filter that we have here for now. In this case, we could hit right again and then just wiggle this when it's playing, or just grab this and say show LC Freak Automation Track. That's our low cut filter. We can also decide if we want this filter a little bit steeper. Right now it's set to 12 dBs. If you right click on the dial, you can choose a 24 dB filter if you prefer. I think a 12 dB should be fine for what we wanted to do. And now you'll see we have an automation lane for the filter there. And let's say, for example, as well, I don't ever want to go higher than 1 kilohertz now, or let's say, yeah, 1 kilohertz is fine. So I want to be quite precise about this. You can try and keep it precise by looking over here. It's quite hard to do though when you're working in a small little automation lane. So I have got it there to 1 kilohertz. You can hold down the Alt key to get freehand movement, and then you can also hold down the Control key to lock it into one position. Shift key should give you smaller increments. But what you can also do is, with our info line open that we looked at earlier, when you have a event selected, you can have a automation node selected and just manually enter the value up at the top here. So we'll just go 1000, say yes, and there you go. So we've got a bit of automation now for our filter. And I've just realized that we don't have that filter turned on. Sorry, you want to just turn it on here with this little power switch. There we go. Now it's on. You can see it's active there. Take a look now. There we go. So we've got our automation leading into this little break section here. We're going to do the same with the kick as well. Once again, right click here, say show LC Freak Automation Track there. We'll do that. We'll leave it on 12 dBs once again. And this is for our kick drum. Let's bring this up, and we can be precise with this one again. Let's say 600 Hertz, for example. It's always just nice to do that, because when you want to come back up to that position later on, you always know that 600, it's a nice round number rather than just freehanding it. Let's 600, and let's just turn on our filter once again. Actually, maybe just bring that down to 300 instead. Now, be careful of that. This happens quite often where automation that's really sudden like that, it will sometimes just not get the transient of a kick or something. So you may want to just snap the automation to the kick before that and then delete this one here, which will give you a ramp. If you're worried about that, you could just do that. So just a smoother transition, because then it will actually always catch that kick. You could hear that the transient wasn't coming all the way through. Maybe this one in here, maybe. And we may want to just filter out the lows here on these again. Bring those back in. We'll do the same on the bass. This time we can go with a plugin just to show you how that works. We'll go with more filter. We'll use 12 dB again, set that to 100. This one you have a resonance control at least, so you can change the filter resonance. The track filters don't have resonance control. And once again, just grab frequency. We'll say show automation track. And we can filter our bass now in that section. Let's pull that down. Bring that down again. I think from an arrangement standpoint, we'll add in something new in this section. So we can actually move this bit over here. We'll have this one just be the main loop, this one be the main loop build from here. We can actually extend that one and make this one the same. So we'll add some new bits in here. We'll add some pads or something in the next video. And this one can continue to build over this whole section. Now I want to just show you something here quickly while we're busy with this automation. If I was to copy these, you'll see that this happens. It actually takes the automation that was in this section here and it copies it when I duplicate those. If you even want to avoid doing that, let's say you have some automation here already that you want to preserve. And if I copy this now, you'll see it'll overwrite it. So what we can do is we can select this one here, come up to this section over here, and this automation follows events. Turn that off. Now, if you duplicate, you'll see that you won't have that issue anymore. One other tool that is useful to remember as well when you're working with automation is the range selection tool. If you select a section here like this, for example, we could duplicate just the automation there. And if you're working a lot with the range selection tool as well, you can actually have the arrow tool selected. And then hit this little equals button, which will combine the selection tools. So you have the normal selection tool, which will function the way it normally does on the bottom. But you'll see as soon as you hover on top here, you get the range tool. Same goes to the bottom here as well. You can move stuff with the arrow there, but if we go up to the top, we have the range selection tool automatically. So it's basically context sensitive as to whether you are working on the bottom or the top of the bar or the track display. Cool. So we'll just we'll go back to the way we were, and let's just finish off this little bit of automation here. So this section here, we're going to go into the break now. Yeah, so straighten these up quickly. So this will be our breakdown here. And we'll do some additional parts once again. We'll put some pads and so on in here. Cool, so that's just the basics of automation there. We won't spend much more time on that. Let's just keep moving. We'll get some more elements in here so that we can flesh out some more of these parts here. We'll do a pass over a lot of this and just sort of fine-tune everything as we get all the elements of the track in. Right, I'll catch you in the next video. See you then. Cheers. Right, welcome back, guys. We're going to add a few more elements to our track in this video. It is sounding a little bit bare bones at the moment, so we want to bring in some pads and perhaps some additional synth parts. We'll take a look at some of the additional instruments available to you in Cubase 13. Let's start off by checking out Pad Shop. I'm going to click Open and add a new track here. We'll select Pad Shop over here, and let's just add a new track. Right, so this is Pad Shop. Rather uninteresting at first. It's just a sine wave sample that we have loaded up here. Now, this is in fact a sampler and a granular sampler at that. It does some pretty cool stuff with samples. So this is also an alternative to using the Cubase track sampler. We'll take a look at some of the things that you can do with this right now. So I actually have some multi-sampled stuff on my hard drive here. Let's grab a piano sample to start here. We can bring that in onto the oscillator here. And we'll just turn this right up, soft sample. And you can hear pretty much hearing nothing there, but if we start to move this around, you get a single cycle out of that waveform. Now you have a number of different modes here. This will work as a granular, currently as it is right now, the position here. And it is generating grains, so we can increase the number of grains. So really some interesting stuff happening there with this. We can also set the oscillator to a different playback mode here. So this is not granular, it plays in cycles. And we can slow down the speed of this one here. So you can turn sort of samples that are not pad samples into sort of very long stretched out things. You can go right down to sort of like 1% movement here. And of course, when you start adding effects and things like that, it becomes rather interesting. And of course, you have two layers of these as well. So anyways, that's just a quick introduction. I don't really get into too much of the sound design aspects of this, but just to kind of show you around, let's just jump into the presets as well. And I'll also just talk about the preset browsing in Cubase. We looked at this briefly inside of Halion Sonic. But you'll see every VST instrument up here will have this little preset section, which is going to open up your media bay. Now, these can be changed, the tagging things from the media bay that we looked at right at the beginning of this tutorial, and then this shows a mini version of the media bay when you're clicking on this. However, it will automatically filter to presets that are valid to this plugin only. And you'll see you'll actually get an auto preview just by changing the patch here. Just use the down and up arrows here. So let's try and narrow this down again using Media Bay. We can grab strings here, for example. Let's take a listen to what they have. I really like those. I think we're going to stick with those. So we'll grab the Awakening, and let's say it's something that we're going to want to use again later on as well. We can bring up Media Bay and just change the rating to a 5-star one. We'll find that easily again. Cool. So let's close this down, and we're going to bring down some of the parts from this section here and just reuse them for the pads. So let's just copy these down to pad shop. Yeah. Now, if you remember, we cut these up. We're going to actually just highlight those and remove the first notes of each section. I'm sorry, the last notes. We'll keep the first notes of each section. Yeah. And let's just remove this. I'll show you a cool little trick with these as well. Let's select all of these. Now, if we were to just use this to pull them out, you'll see that some of them are going to be the right length. Some are going to be too short. Obviously, we want them to all end up on the edges with each other. So if you look at the MIDI window over here where we've got the scale assistant here, we've also got some additional things, the chord editing we've looked at, note expression, and so on. If you come down to some of these settings here, you've got more quantized settings, transpose settings, and you've got length as well. So let's take the length here and let's select apply legato. And that automatically selects these up to the next ones, up to the next ones. So just so every time up to the first notes there, you'll see this last one didn't do that. If we wanted to make sure that that one goes all the way to the end, we'd need another note there. And if we selected those all and then apply legato once again, it'll lengthen all of those notes. And obviously that one's outside of the loop, so we can just remove that one. Cool, so let's just listen to our pads now. We'll have them come in here somewhere. Might actually, in this section, we might just transpose them up slightly. So we'll do shift and up to go 1 octave up. And we're going to probably want to change up the settings for these slightly, because in this section it seems to be dragging a little bit. So we want to just adjust the actual sound itself. Click P to go to a loop here. We can select this loop. And let's actually just turn the loop on. Now, if any time that you want to go back to the starting position, you'll see if I hit play now, it will continue to play from where it is. You can, in the preferences section, have that go back to where you started. Or if you have a number pad on your keyboard, just hit 1. It'll take you back to the first locator there very easily. That way, if you could be playing anywhere in the track now, and just hit 1 to go back again. Also, conversely, if you put in markers at any point in your track using the marker track, those will be assigned to 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on upwards. The 2 key would be the right locator, and 1 key would be that one there. Right, so let's take a listen to this. So we can just hear that it's taking too long to build up volume here, so we really wanted to turn down the attack speed of the pads. That's already better. Now we can turn down the volume here as well. Once again, we can do a little bit of automation here. So we'll just sort of open up the main body of the sound over time. Once again, we could just right click here, say add filter cutoff to automation track. There we go. And let's just add in a little bit of automation here. And let's put in another section here. We're going to bring in sort of an arpeggiated kind of sound here. Now, a lot of the stuff inside of Halion Sonic actually has arpeggiators in. I'll show you 2 different ways that we can do these arpeggiated melodies. Let's add another track. And we'll go to Halion Sonic. Right now, yeah, I'm looking for a specific preset, so we can actually just search for it here. And you'll see the options down here come up. That's the one I'm looking for. And you could also, as we've just looked at, click over here. And all the patches from Halen Sonic would be available in MediaBay as well. So we could type there and find the one that we're looking for as well. Now, again, we're just going to use the same chord structure here. Bring that down. Let's take a listen to this. Let's bring this up. That sounds pretty good. We'll probably keep those running. Now, another way that you could do arpeggiated stuff is by using a MIDI plugin. We looked at that briefly with a drum plugin. So let's maybe bring in one more retrolog here and just experiment with this. We don't have to keep this if we don't want to. But let's bring in an instance of retrolog here. And I'll copy this down once again. We're just using the same chords. I do this a lot of the time, just repeating notes, but then using different sounds and different effects to get different feelings from them. Let's try and find a plucked kind of synth. We can do that again by using MediaBay here. So let's just click and we can actually search sort of more intelligently here, find synth comp perhaps, and then go with analog. And let's take a listen to what we can find here. So I really like that sound. And now, of course, Retrolog does actually have its own arpeggiator in it as well, so we can do that. Or we can opt for the MIDI plugin if you have another VST instrument that you're wanting to use that doesn't have a arpeggiator, and you can use this option too. So let's just turn this off actually for now. I'm going to turn the arpeggiator off here, and let's go back to our MIDI channel here. And we'll go to MIDI inserts. Remember, if you don't have this here, you can do that with the setup sections. Make sure that it is enabled here. And we can go in and grab the Apache 5. And this one will give you some options. You've also got another one here called Apache SX, which is a slightly more complex one. And you have some options for up and down. We'll leave that as, let's just go down. And we'll set this at 16th notes. We could have the note length slightly shorter. That should be fine as it is. And there we go. So let's just play back. We'll disable this first. We'll turn the power off for that one. Let's play back these notes. And now let's turn on our arpeggiator. Now, in the case with these, we may want to have these sort of play legato as well, so we don't have them resetting every single time. What we can do then is just, now that they are hit with legato, we can extend these slightly, just a little bit longer so that they overlap one another. And actually, in this case, I'm not liking where the arpeggiator is changing over. So what we can do in this case is make sure that these go a little bit more straight. We'll change the quantizing for these. So let's set this to quarter notes, I think. Or actually half notes even. Just to get rid of these initial switches that we have currently. We want them on main sections rather. So now that we have the quantize set to half, we can just go and say Alt Q, which is my quantize control. And we can also go to functions here again and just select legato once again. Close up those gaps and fix those. Cool, let's take a listen to that now. That's the problem there, they're rolling over. So if that was the case as well, you also have some other functionality like deleting overlaps, which you could have done there. Delete overlaps, mono and poly. You can also, sometimes you may have double notes, which you can do. You can delete the double notes from here as well, delete doubles, and so on. I like that. Let's do a little bit of automation for these once again. We'll just remove those and we can, in fact, we can instance these. And let's open up Retrolog. Let's get off the arpeggiator page back to the synth page, and we'll just play with the filter for this again. And we'll add this to automation. Right, so there we go. We've got a nice amount of elements that we can play around with here. I think this is sounding pretty decent for our first attempt. What we're going to do now is move into the next video and just take a look at just getting a very, very, very basic mix going. We're just going to adjust levels because everything sounds a little bit out of whack right now, and some very basic EQing that we're going to do. Level 2 will really be where the mix down takes shape. We'll also look at just exporting the track in the next video as well. So I will catch you then. See you soon. Right, welcome back, guys. We're going to continue and just kind of get a little basic mix going here. Like I said, we're not going to do a whole lot, just some basic EQing, setting some levels. But before we do that, the first thing I like to do before I start mixing things, just make sure that everything is nice and organized. So I'll run you through just a quick sort of demo housekeeping session, as I like to call it, a housekeeping session, just kind of get everything nice and neat and into the correct places. So we already have our drums into a folder here. I'd like to also arrange the other parts. So typically I like to keep the bass stuff by itself, so I could also put this into a folder as well. And let's just go bass. And we can just rename this as bass. Remember, if you hold down shift and then click, it will rename all the parts as well. Now all the instrument parts, I could put those all into their own part as well. These ones, as well as the, I think these could all go together. I think in this case, it's not too much stuff going on here. In this case, let's actually just add, let's use our macro. So let's go Control Shift F, which is going to be the group and then folder track. So it's going to add a bus for all of these as well. And we'll say, okay. And this is actually just rename the bus as the bus and the group. We'll call this instruments, or actually even easier, let's just call this synths. All right, so we have a synths bus over here, and then we also have the folder, which we can also call synths 2. And this will just recolorize all of these. We'll give these all just one color, just all synth parts. And my bass parts normally go red. And then these ones we're just gonna, we'll do the same. We'll just go Control Shift F. We'll just call these FX. Rename the folder as FX. And let's just go orange with these. Great, that'll do. So that's the basics done. Now let's look at the mixer. I want to set up some, just change the levels of some of these parts here. So we kind of we'll actually grab this section here, I think, where everything's happening at once. And we'll open up the mixer, F3. So I did talk about a few of these things earlier on when we looked at the mixer right in the beginning of the series. I'll show you another good place to utilize some of this. We're not recording or anything now, so we could actually disable our inputs here. We don't need to see these at all. You can hide tracks entirely in the visibility section. Yes, we could just look at these here and just remove them entirely. We don't need those right now. Now, on a real desk, analog desk, quite often the group channels, the bus channels are on the right-hand side of the mixer where the stereo out is the main master stereo out. Now, you can actually replicate this when you're doing a mix down. It's not necessary for this one so much because it's a very simple mix, but if you are doing something a little bit more complicated, you may decide to take all the bus channels like this one and this one, for example, and you could actually go over to the zones tab down here and move those over to the right. So we'd have our buses there. These would be our sub mixes that we're working on there, and then this would be the main mix. So this would feed into that. This one would feed into this one, yeah. So it's just a nice way of being able to organize things. You don't have to do it this way, but you can. Let's just quickly play this back and we'll just adjust the levels quickly. It's right off the bat, I can see this stuff here is just way too loud. And don't forget that we have our quick link here, or we can hold down Shift Alt to adjust these together. Cool. Now let's just take a little bit of EQ here. We can do this on the mixer too. And one of the most important EQs you're going to be using is the filter, like we looked at earlier on when we were doing the automation. Another really nice thing is that you can see the EQ in this top window here, which is just a great way of keeping tabs on what's getting in the way of other things. So let's just set up a mixer. Currently we have nothing showing here, so we're going to want our EQs, I think, and we're going to want our pre's. And routing's always good to have. Inserts and sends and stuff will come to in level 2. But we're going to keep this equalizer curve displayed here so we can just see what's going on. And let's just zoom in a little bit so we can take up all the space. Right, so for example, we have our bass. And we're probably not going to need all of this, so we can do that actually on this channel here. We can click on the EQ to bring that up. We're actually interested in the pre's here, so we're going to turn on the low cuts. And this one, in this case, we're automating the low cut on this one. So if we wanted to do an additional low cut, we'd actually need a second EQ on that. We could just, on this EQ here, change this one to a high pass as well. And we'll do that. So we've set this to around 80 Hertz, just a high pass filter. That'll do. So now we have this filter and this filter. This one's cutting off the lows here, and then this one will do the automation that we had in the track earlier. Let's also take a look at the other bits playing here. Okay, now these really don't need the low ends in there. Now we can use the low cuts from the pre's on this one. We'll just dial this up all the way up to about 300, I guess. Same goes for these ones. Patch up, we can get some of the lows out too, not all of them. And you can do the vice versa with the bass, for example. There's no need to have any of the tops in there, so you could do a high cut on those too. Well, this is a sub, so it's not really necessary, but we could just in case cut those down too. And you see, it's just really nice to be able to see what is being low cutted and what isn't. Generally speaking, a lot of stuff like the drums here could also be low cut as well. Let's take a listen to what's going on here. And anytime you want to get rid of all these solos, you could just use this one at the top. Let's just solo the drums again now. So like these hats, for example, we really don't need the lows in there. We can cut those out slightly. And sorry, we want the low cut. Do that with all of these. In actual fact, all of the high stuff we could do all in one go. So remember what I said, that we could do everything using quick links or Q-Link. Just do that, holding Shift and Alt again, and we can just set all of these at one time. And then we've removed all the unnecessary frequencies from the hats and shakers in one go. I want to take just a little bit off the loop that we have here. And I want to just add a little bit of a bass boost to our kick. It's a little bit lacking in the bottom, so we'll just give it a little bit of a shelf here. Right, let's take a listen to the balance now. Right, that's already sounding a whole lot better. Once again, we don't really want all the lows in this effect stuff here. So again, we can just use Shift and Alt, such an important command that just click here. We'll do all of them at the same time. And let's also just quickly jump back into this, and we'll add a group channel to the drum parts as well. Let's right click this time. We're not going to use the macro because it's already in a folder. So if you right click, go to add track and then group channel to selected tracks, it will group all of those together. We'll call this drums. Right, now we can also take our drums bus that we have here now, and we can move it over to the right hand side like we have there. And let's also do the same. We can actually do this inside of the mixer here too. Let's go to group channel to selected tracks. Call this one bass. And now we can take our bass and our drum bus, stick them on the right hand side here again, so we have everything in place there. We can also just colorize these channels. If we click down here, we've got our drums in blue and our bass was supposed to be red. There we go. So now we've got sort of a macro way to mix as well. So if I decided that perhaps the synths are too loud, I can bring them all down just from here. Let's just take a listen to this again and just readjust the balance using these. So I don't really want to go much louder because my drums are quite loud there already, but I could bring down these other elements. And there we go. I think that's a fairly decently balanced mix for now. There's still a lot of work that's going to be done here. As I said, we're going to get into a lot of the mixing stuff in level 2. Right, so let's just stop right there, and we're going to do one last video. We're just going to take a look at how to prepare your track for exporting. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers. Right, welcome back, guys. Let's wrap this tutorial series up and export our track. So we're going to take a look at the export window inside of Cubase. It's an incredibly powerful feature. We're not going to get too in-depth into it this time around, but I'll show you just the basics. We're just going to set our left and right locators here. We'll just drag that one across, and we'll bring this one to the end of the track around here somewhere. There we go. So let's go over to the file section now, and we're going to go to export and then audio mixdown. Right, so it'll be presented with this window. This is the audio export window, and you have a lot of different options here. So let's just run through what this can do for you. Now we are just going to be exporting a stereo output right now, but you can also export separate stems. Often when I'm doing mastering, a request stems to master for clients. In that case, you're going to quite often want to be sending the buses that you have set up here. You may have more than 4 normally in a track, but in this case, if I was wanting to export the stems, I can do this, and we can just choose multiple in that case. And in this, we can just then grab all of the buses, and as it stands right now, we would be exporting the stereo output, the synths, FX, drums, and bass all by themselves. So you'd have 5 audio files being exported at the same time. We can actually do that right now just to show you how that's done. You're going to set the name of your track. So we have Sonic Academy Cubase Level 1A. That's fine. We can maybe just shorten it for this. So let's just shorten it to Sonic Academy just for the sake of this tutorial. You change your location. By default, it will create a mixdown folder within the folder that you're working, the project settings project folder. You can also change the path to wherever you want. This is going to be a preview of the naming structure. Now, the naming structure is pretty powerful as well, especially when you're doing multiple channels, for example. If you click the little tab over here, the settings file, you can actually set up how it names things for you. So if we were to remove all of these, for example, you just have Sonic Academy Wave. That's not going to help us though, because we are exporting 5 different channels. So like we had there, you have a counter, for example, which would give you, just drag that in, it would give you Sonic Academy 00000. You could change how many digits you want with that. However you want to set this up. What may be more useful in this case is to do the channel number, and let's go with channel type. Or in fact, what may be even better there is to bring in the channel name, for example. So we can have the name of the export, Sonic Academy, channel name, bass, and what type of channel is this? It's a group channel. So that's how you set up the naming structure, and you can do different names for everything just based on these rules that you set up. And this becomes really, really handy when you're exporting masses of different profiles and stems and so on. Sound design work and stuff, you can have locators send certain parts of a track as well. I use the locators quite often to export radio edits and extended edits of tracks at the same time. We're not going to look at that right now, but that is something that you can do. Now you want to just move down here. You can save a preset here. I'm not going to worry about this stuff too much. You've got wave files. That's what we're going to begin using. We're working at 44.1 kilohertz. That's fine. 24-bit is fine as well. We are working at that. We could export at 32 or 32-bit floats if we wanted to. Sometimes that is a safer option to use when it comes to things that might be clipping. They can be recovered if you're using 32-bit files. Interleaved is fine as well. You can also export to mono down mixes, split channels left and right from surround, all sorts of stuff that you can do there. Now you've also got the option to include effects with your bounces or not. So we're going to go with inserts and strip. We could disable them dry. We could do groups and sends as well. That would all be included and routed back if you have reverb sends and so forth. And you can have every single one run through a master channel too. We don't have a master channel set up right now or any limiters or anything, so we don't need that to run. We're just going to leave the insert and strip on. After export, you can choose to do a number of things. You can do nothing. We could insert that into the pool, bring that back into this project. We could create an audio track and bring the files in. And in the case of mastering, like we are now exporting stems, you could actually create a new master project automatically from here once you export your stems, and it'll bring those stems into the master project so you can start setting up a master for your track. We'll leave this as do nothing right now. Once you've got everything set up here, all you need to do is say add to queue. And you'll see you have channel batch and project mixdown folder, project mixdown folder. All of these, you've got stereo out, which is the main mix that we have. We've got the synths separately. We've got the FX separate, the drums separate, and the bass separate. And that's all we need from here. We can just hit start, export, and there you go. Right, so there you go. Congratulations, you have exported your first track out of Cubase 13. Thanks for sticking around, guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial series. Now, this track is not going to win any Grammys as it is right now. It's very basic, but, you know, this is a great starting point just to get you settled into Cubase 13. Do stick around for level 2, where we're going to really kind of step it up a notch, take a look at a lot of the effects processing, sends, setting up reverbs, advanced EQ techniques, and way, way more. So I will catch you in the next series, level 2. Till then, take care and see you then. Cheers.